And welcome back to the Vic State Cricket Podcast. Well, Jono, our special guest, our legend this week, has got a very interesting story to tell. We know it's Adam Crosthwaite, but before we speak to Adam, you're a teammate of him at St Kilda. What can you tell us about him? What makes him a good cricketer? What makes him one of the best Premier cricketers we've probably seen in 20 years when you look at his record?
Yeah, I think I'm obviously extremely fortunate to have played under him for the last, 2 or 3 seasons. I still remember the first time Crossy called me when he was coming over. I just remember walking away from that conversation thinking, geez, this is a guy that's got so much knowledge. He's got an incredible experience through different states, different levels. And that was one of the biggest things that stood out straight away for me was just he's a guy that can just express his knowledge in an extremely intelligent way as well. And that's probably the biggest thing. There's a lot of guys that have the knowledge but probably don't quite know how to deliver it sometimes to the younger players. And, I think his on-field talents are something that sort of just speaks in the record itself. But, for me, that's probably one of the biggest things that stood out, just his incredible knowledge and the way he can look after and lead players around him as well.
Adam Crosthwaite, welcome.
Thank you.
How'd that sound?
That's amazing. You brought a tear to my eye, John. It was like
That's the first and last time you'll ever hear
that. I know. You put someone on the spot like that. It's nice to say, but no, thank you. Happy to be here.
It's an amazing story because cricket in a number of different states, a number of different countries, which brings, you're not even 40 years of age yet, but you've got this worldly experience as a cricketer. Would you have it any other way?
Look, I probably would. I would have loved to have stayed in Victoria and played a lot more first-class cricket for Victoria. And, if I had it my way, I probably would have loved to have done that and played for Australia. But the way that it all panned out, I don't think any move that I made was a wrong one. I think they were all what I needed to do for my career. As a professional cricketer, it's sometimes what you have to do. And as a wicketkeeper, that's a really tough one when there's only 6 first-class positions in the country and 1 Australian spot that you're going for. Yeah, you need opportunity. And, Matthew Wade and I were duking it out for some years there. And, it was just I needed to move because Victoria had made their mind up that they were going with him, and which ended up being a great call because he played Test cricket and he's still playing cricket for Australia. And hats off to them. And look, that hurt me as a Victorian, but as a professional, you have to get up and go. And then I went to New South Wales, and then in turn went to South Australia, then went back to New South Wales. So a bit of a journey, but it was. I've had a great time along the way. I've played with some great players and in some great states and in some great clubs, and I've been pretty lucky. So I've loved every step. If I could have had it any different, I would have loved to have stayed in Victoria.
It's the reason I asked you the question is that being a wicketkeeper, as you said, there's only one position in the team, and if we go all the way back to when you emerged on the scene, coming through the Australian under-19 team, you were seen as a real young gun and an exciting young talent for Victorian cricket. What was it like bursting onto the scene through the Australian under-19 team, and here you are in a Victorian team just laden with superstars? Yeah,
it was an amazing time. And I was 17 when David Hooks got me into the squad, and I was around my heroes. Like Brad Hodge was a hero of mine forever, and Darren Berry was the greatest wicketkeeper I've ever seen and probably still is. And to train with these guys every day and to be around them, and Matthew Elliott and Jason Armberger and Colin Miller was still around when they're like some great Victorian cricketers were there and thereabouts, and I was able to come through with Cameron White and Andrew McDonald, and Finchy was younger than me. And we probably had, I think when you look back Victorian cricket, that David Hooks era when we started and that group got together, you could probably say that that's the start of when Victoria started to dominate domestic cricket.
Pressure. What was it like being that young gun, coming through, getting an opportunity, learning from Darren Berry, but then with pressure and opportunity becomes expectation as well, comes expectation. What was that like through those early days?
Yeah, look, it was there was a lot of pressure, and I think looking back on it now, I probably played when I was too young. My wicket keeping was always up to standard and was always very good. Looking back on it now, I didn't know how to bat. I was skillful, I was dynamic, I was good in the short form game, but I probably took that aggressive approach into Shield cricket, which was probably an undoing. And I think I was 21 when Matthew Wade rocked up as a younger wicketkeeper, and we went head to head for probably 2 or 3 years, and the rest is history. But I probably just didn't nail my Shield batting at the start, and I put that down to being young and dumb and trying to do anything I could for the team. At the time was probably just a little bit immature with my batting, but the pressure was there. It was high stakes. I think the team and that group. It's funny when you leave Victoria after being in a squad like that, you just think that that's the way that cricket is and the way that world cricket is, and then it wasn't until I left and went into the New South Wales squad and ended up in the South Australian squad that you realised how special that Victorian team was. And look, we didn't all get along. Every one of them were just competitive, and they were such great cricketers individually. As a squad, you can name 20 of the players that were in that squad who probably all thought at one stage that they were the best player in the state, and that's what made us so good. It was competitive for spots. It was always pressure. And Greg Shippard used to stand at the end of the nets and watch the quicks and try and pick from a barrage of 10 quicks that anyone could play in the next Shield game. And when you've got Nanners, Harwood, Lewis, you've got a young James Pattinson, young Peter Siddle, Clint Mackay, John Hastings, but then we had guys like Jared Denton, Damien Wright. Like, batting in the nets at Victoria was the hardest thing you'll ever do in cricket. And this was before front foot no ball, so they were bowling quick and they were bowling a little bit over the front line. And I've always said that if you could survive those net sessions, you can survive any cricket. And it was good fun and I learned a lot. But it wasn't until I left I realised how special that group was, because that's the group that I was built into, and it probably still rings true in a lot of my coaching and the way that I work with the guys at the moment. Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about Darren Berry, Matthew Wade a little bit later on, because there's so many interesting discussions around that. But bringing Jono in as well, because you're quite similar in your pathways in a sense of playing Australian under-19s, playing a specialist role as an all-rounder in your case compared to Adam as a keeper. What's it like when you're going through that pathway, you're getting all these opportunities, you're the big dog on campus, so to speak, that all of a sudden you go into very much a sea and you're a small fish as opposed to a big fish in a small pond, that adjustment?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a tricky one. I'm not sure if you felt the same way, Crossy, but it's almost like there's almost like a false hope in a sense, just because you're playing an under-19s World Cup, and as you said, you feel like you're at this level where it's like, I'm just a click away, I guess. But you come into a senior setup, especially Victoria, and it's like, well, I'm actually a lot further than I think I'm at, which I think is actually a really good thing, because I think when you're at that tender age of 18, 19, it's very quick to sort of just go, I know it all, I can do everything myself. Whereas when you sort of get into a group where I think my group's probably different to what you walked into. Like, I've got Pete Hanscom, Pato was there at the time, like Cameron White, Trav Dean, just so many different guys that from a batting perspective I was looking at going like, okay, that's actually how you go about things, whereas I am in such a different position and probably don't fully understand my game. I'm not sure if you felt the same way, Crossy, but that was probably the biggest thing for me.
Do you feel you have not so much a target on your back, but your name is up in lights because you've had that pathway, you've played for Australia, you come on, you're the exciting young gun in the Victorian team, that the expectation's really high that it's just going to happen straight away?
I think I was probably a little bit different, just in a sense that I was not in Will Sullivan's shadow, but he was the big upcoming all-rounder. So I think that helped me a little bit in a sense that I could just sort of go about my business and probably wasn't in the limelight as much as Sullo is. And I mean, you watch him now, he's just scored one of the better hundreds I've seen. Like, he's a tremendous player, but I think for me, that's probably helped a little bit in the sense that I can walk away and just sort of really in the back pages sort of just go about my business, I guess.
Yeah, what about you, Adam? Coming, as I said before, bursting on the scene and the next Darren Berry, the next Ian Healy, the next whatever. Did you feel that not so much you had a point to prove, but people were wanting you to prove a point as to why you're going to get these opportunities, particularly when, as you said, there's one position in the team?
Yeah, look, I think my situation was different again from John's, but my situation, Darren Berry was the only wicketkeeper I knew for Victoria. Like he was the Victoria, he was what Victoria was, and I just watched since I was, I think, 8 years old.
Yeah.
And the idea of taking over from him was exciting, but daunting and scary. And yeah, it was. And we had Adam Gilchrist, which my game was sort of moulded on. So to play against someone like a Gilchrist and be chasing that dream, but then to take over from Chuck was, there was a lot of pressure to it. It was different. Chuck was such a senior person in the squad. And then the way it all happened, my first game, Chuck slept through his alarm clock and at the Allan Border Medal, and I got my first game because Hooksy suspended him. So there was a lot of things at the time. It was just a whirlwind. I was away with the under-19 Australian team at the time, and yeah, Chuck unfortunately slept through his alarm, and Hooksy nailed him. And next thing, I'm on a plane up to Brisbane to play. So yeah, it was daunting to take over from Chuck, but it was exciting. It was the spot that I'd wanted since I was a child.
Did he help you when you sort of came into the squad? How did that sort of dynamic go? Because it's obviously pretty difficult being the older guy and you got the young guy coming through. But how did you go with that?
Yeah, no, look, Chuck was good. I think I hit him a lot more balls than what he hit me. Put it that way. But no, he was great, and he still is to this day. Like his knowledge on cricket is very good. But yeah, he was just a giant of the game in my eyes. But again, walking into that squad. Like you had Shane Warne walking around. He was finished playing one-day cricket for Australia, so he was with the squad a lot more than usual. You just had so many big personalities that, yeah, I was just a little boy in the corner just doing my thing. And, under Hooksy and under Shippy was sort of trying to become your own man whilst learning how to play cricket was, it was a baptism of fire, that's for sure. But it's shaped me into the cricketer that I became and that I am. And a lot of the lessons I tell John and speak to the guys about, it's usually lessons that from that era of Victorian cricket.
It's something you said resonates with me around opportunity, because often it's you've got to take your opportunity. But sometimes when your opportunity comes, you might not necessarily be ready to be at your best to take that opportunity, but it's when the opportunity comes. And you're a bit like that. Yeah,
look, 100%. I think that, my opportunity, I debuted when I was 18 in one-day cricket. I think I played when I was 19, 20 in Shield cricket. If I had my way right now, being an older player, I wish that I played when I was 24, 25. And I think this is the issue that we sometimes have in cricket, that we push these young kids too hard, too early, and we expect too much from them. I think that you give them 2 years, if they haven't come on, it's on to the next one. And I think that's the danger we have. But yeah, so looking back, I wish I played Shield cricket from 25 to 35, not from 20 to 24. And that's sort of I look at some of these young guys now and the pressure. You talk about pressure, that's the pressure that they're under. And a lot of that is because they are the next Michael Clarke. They are the next Steve Smith. Is this the next Ricky Ponting? And I think we've seen probably a diminished older brigade in Shield cricket over the last 15 years. And I think when we were the strongest as an Australian team, we had senior cricketers, and that squad I walked into, like we had senior cricketers in Jason Armberger, Matthew Elliott, Ian Harvey, guys like this who, if they're around in today's cricket era, they probably wouldn't still be on contract, which is an interesting topic when you talk about the strength of Australian cricket.
Playing for Victoria, and you said as such a young man with all these great players, what are your memories? Catches stand out? I remember as a Victorian cricket fan, stumpings down leg side, those sorts of things. But what stands out that you might just occasionally dream of about what it was like back then?
Look, all of my cricket that I've played, and I've played a lot of it now, that I don't actually remember a lot on field. I remember wicket-keeping to Warney, and I think that was probably the highlight of my career, to be able to wicket-keep to Shane Warne, the greatest for so many games and in situations. I remember there's a Shield game in Adelaide, day 4. South Australia were chasing runs, and it was Warren versus Lehman, and there would have been 300 people at the ground, Adelaide Oval, day 4. It was the best cricket I've ever seen in my life. And the rest of us, we all stood around and we just watched Warren versus Lehman, and I was able to keep to it. It was one of the greatest cricketing days ever, and I think I kept really well. We ended up stumping him, but actually don't think it was out, but got given, and we ended up winning the game. But it was those memories on field are incredible. I played with incredible players, watching Brad Hodge dominate, watching Dirk Nanners fly like the wind, and Shane Harwood scare people, and David Hussey and Cameron White just demolish attacks. I played in such an amazing era of Victorian cricket that was, I look back fondly on that. But I think the main part of it is just the change rooms, and it's what you miss when you leave a team and leave a squad is the days after, or the time after a day's fielding or day in the dirt. So that's probably what you miss when you sort of step away from it. But yeah, like playing for Victoria was a dream of mine as a kid, and it's something I'm super proud of. And yeah, love walking into the room. I love seeing guys like John play for Victoria, and teammates play, and just watching the squad. I think I'm a big Cricket Victorian cricket fan. So still a fan even today. So I enjoy watching the boys play.
I've got to ask. I've been fortunate enough to play a fair bit with Crossy, and hearing you speak about the group you came up through. Is that where you got your fiery on-field stuff from? Because I've seen him hold up a game for about 5-10 minutes sometimes, so which I love because I love the fire in you, but I've got to ask, where's it come from?
Yeah, look, I think when you learn from some of the best, they're just competitive, and look, I think that I think there's a little bit of that's been lost in the game. That there's obviously a line, and there's no, like, the abuse side of things is no good, and the sledging side of things is no good. But I think the competitiveness of cricket sometimes gets lost, and again. And I know I talk about this group, this early 2000s Victorian, probably 2010 Victorian squad. Like, it was the most competitive group of individual men that I've ever seen. They all thought they were better than each other. They all went out to prove it every single net session, every single game. But there was something about that group that when you walked onto the field, as much we could be arguing, we could not approve of the strategy or whatever. But as soon as we walked on that field, it was everyone knew you were playing for Victoria with each other. So, and then after the game, and a few beers would be said, and and words were said, and people get fired up, and like we had some really interesting post-match celebrations. But that group was as competitive, and yeah, that's where I learned how to play cricket. I don't take a step back, probably because the guys I played with were like that, and that's how I learned how to play the game.
Fascinating. So you told me before about Darren Berry and the support role that you had to give him as much as the other way around. With Matthew Way, what's that like? It's almost like a soccer goalkeeper who's going to get the job in goal. Can you be mates? Can you make each other better, or is that that might not be the right thing to do for your own personal growth and development?
I think it's really difficult. I think that Wadey and I had a professional relationship for sure. I wanted his spot. He wanted my spot. We both wanted to play cricket for Australia. We both knew that there could only be one Victorian keeper, and we had it for a few years that I was the T20 and the one-day keeper, and I was playing Shield cricket as a bat. He was the Shield keeper, but playing one-day and T20 cricket as a bat. So we were in the same team a lot. And just like I was saying, when we stepped onto the ground, we were teammates. It was do whatever, and he's one of the most competitive cricketers Australia's seen for a long time, and he's had a great career. It's did I want his spot? Yeah. Did he want mine? Yeah. And that's ultimately what happened, is that one of us needed to make a decision to leave, and unfortunately that's the decision I had to make, because it was probably heading that way. And all credit to him, and he's gone on and had a great career. So I chose New South Wales to try and break in, because I still, as a 24-year-old, still wanted to play cricket for Australia. And I think I got up to New South Wales and was always the Victorian. And I think because I was a passionate Victorian, moving up there, looking back on it, might not have been the greatest decision. you take the rear vision mirror off and move forward, and you can only do what you can do and get out there and try and play. And I was lucky enough to then get an opportunity over in South Australia, which I loved, and we won a one-day title with South Australia, which was great. But from being mates, look, probably not. Professionally, we worked together, we worked hard, and it was a difficult few years, that's for sure. But as a professional cricketer, you've got to do that. You've got to stay professional, and as we said, we duked it out. He won, and he went on to play for Australia.
So a question I've got for you now as we sort of move forward to Premier Cricket. Now, you guys both play at St Kilda. I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about the St Kilda Cricket Club because it's been so successful. But the importance of having people in the game. Now, you're 37, 38.
Yep.
To be still playing at the highest level in Premier Cricket to help mould the next players through and to be a role model and a leader, but still play. How important is that to you as you almost reflect back on your career?
Yeah, it's huge, and it's the sole reason that I'm still playing. I want guys like John to learn how to be a first class batter. I want Todd Murphy to turn into a Test cricketer. We've got a young parade of quicks which are coming through, that's where I get my enjoyment out of it. I think I'll head into coaching after cricket, but at the moment I feel like I'm coaching on the ground, and being able to work with them in real time is something that I think is really important, because I had those older guys with me, and I've had great coaches along the way, but I've learnt the most off my teammates and guys standing in the middle, fighting it out and figuring out how to do it. And I think that's what we're trying to build at St Kilda, and I think it's sad when older guys get pushed out, and I get it that life and family and jobs get in the way, but the more older people we can keep in the game, older players, I think the better it is for the up and coming kids and guys and men to and girls in the girls side of thing. I think it's really important to have that, because otherwise it becomes a glorified under-19 game, and these guys don't learn. And I'm really hard on John. Really hard on him on Saturdays and through the week, and because yes, we want to win premierships for St Kilda, but we want him to be a first-class cricketer.
So, Jono, do you learn more from Adam on a Saturday in a Premier Cricket game, or in the week having coffees with him, conversations? When do you learn the most about cricket, and maybe even about yourself?
Well, I think Adam's probably quite unique in a sense that we talk quite regularly, so I wouldn't say I learn more on the field than off the field. That's the thing. He's probably one of the guys that I can go to about off-field stuff as well in terms of just life. So I probably learn from Monday to Friday, I reckon, the most, I guess, because it's the conversations you have reflecting on things that probably you get the most, or finding out about what he did in his life growing up even, I've learned a lot from. But that doesn't put any dampener on what I learn off him on a Saturday. I think it's amazing. If I go back to the phone call he gave me when he was coming across from Sydney, it was the first thing he said to me was, I want you to be the man at St Kilda that's going to make runs, and you're going to push your case that way. And that was probably the first time I thought of, okay, I got to go out there and I'm trying to make runs every single week. Not that I probably hadn't really thought about it when I was at that younger, rawer age, but he sort of changed my focus to being, it's like, okay, you're the guy that's going to do it today. Don't try and leave it to someone else. Don't think about that per se. It's just go out, get the job done, do it, and be the guy. And I think that's probably one of the biggest message he says to me every single week almost is, be that guy, and that's helped me tremendously.
So you're still plundering runs, Adam, at Premier Cricket level. I'm really interested because in a lot of ways, cricket's just a series of decision-making out on the field. You've got to make the right decision, and often you make the best decision the older you get. Are you a better batsman now than you were, say, when you were 24, 25?
Oh, 100%.
He can still play Test cricket if you ask him now.
I should be in the Test team. It's 100%. I feel that I wish I was still playing first-class cricket as a batsman, because I think that, my decisions are a lot better. I know my game, and I honestly don't believe you know your game until you're mid to late 20s. And that's why we're still working with John as a work in progress. It's And it's just decision making, it's understanding, it's putting your game plan together. The boys all laugh at me because I tell them no cover drives. I don't hit the ball through the offside. And that's a decision that I've made that's and a lot of the boys will laugh at it, but it's not so much that I don't cover drive, it's the fact that I have a plan that's to the letter for every single player that runs in at me and bowls. And there's a various array of these type of decisions that are almost the onboard computer just computes now. It's and that's not to say that it's all robotic. It's a lot of skill and it's a lot of flair at times, but it's I think, and this is what we're working with the young players, it needs to be, your skill needs to shine through a metric of what you're doing at the right time. So it's something that I'm really hard on with the guys, because I want them to express themselves. I want them to play free and to open up, but it needs to be the percentage play at all times.
30 Premier Cricket centuries would mean he's probably doing the right thing, not playing cover drive, Jono. The state of Premier Cricket, this is to both of you. Last 2 years, COVID, it hasn't just affected Premier Cricket, it's affected cricket everywhere. A lot of white ball cricket, not a lot of batting time, batting with a red ball, bowling 20 overs with a red ball. Do you think it's going to have an effect on the next generation of cricketer, or is it too early to tell?
Look, I hope it doesn't. I think it's great that we're getting back to red ball cricket, and that I didn't really worry about the top 3 or 4 because I felt that they still got enough time to bat. I really felt for the younger guys coming into the teams at 5, 6 and 7 through Premier Cricket that probably haven't batted for multiple hours for a couple of years now, if sort of ever. That the 18-year-old or the 20-year-old hasn't had that bulk volume of balls faced. And I think that's a real something that couldn't have been avoided. And I think that Cricket Victoria and cricket in general fought really hard to make sure that we had competitive cricket over the last few years. But time will tell with that. But I really hope that we can just get back to some long form cricket and the basics can shine. And I've got guys at St Kilda that I want them to face 200 balls in an innings. And I talk about the 200 club, and that's facing 200 balls, and if you do that, you usually make 100 and you usually win the game. So going back to that, I think we're all excited as cricketers to put the whites back on and play some red ball cricket.
What do you reckon, Jono?
Yeah, I think because I've obviously had a lot of different people sort of bring that up with me, because I'm a 23-year-old going through that early phase of my career. I just think you've just got to look at it the other way. Like, I look at it in a way that it's like, well, I've been able to develop my white ball cricket for 2 years straight now, where a lot of, like, if you look at Adam's career, like, you probably didn't get that opportunity when you were at my age. And I think, it's all well and good looking at it and saying, oh, geez, I've missed out on so much red ball cricket, which, I mean, for me, like, I love playing red ball cricket and that does suck. But, I mean, I've been able to develop my spin play against all spinners in white ball cricket, T20 one day, and I think that's something that I'll be able to then bring into red ball cricket and say that, look, that's a skill that I've been able to try and nail through this 2-year period. So I think you can always try and look at it as, oh, geez, we've missed out a bit here, but you got to try and look at it the other way and say that's an amazing skill or skills that we've been able to develop because we've been able to only play white ball cricket.
I think if you look back as well to when 2020 came into the game, 2020 then in turn made one-day cricket better. And I think this will, the amount of one-day cricket that we've played will hopefully make 2-day cricket better. It's different when we talk 4-day cricket into Shield cricket, but the scores, it will be really interesting to see the scores this year in Premier Cricket and what the scoring rates are like, and if the guys play attacking cricket, because we want attacking cricket. It's just, how does that balance hold up from the attack versus the long-term side of the game? But it's going to be great. So John's going to make the 200 club, and he's going to face 200 balls, but he's going to do it at a strike rate of probably 85. So he's going to be scoring a lot of runs.
That's right, lots of balls, but lots of runs. Now, we can't finish this conversation without asking about the Seattle Thunderbolts. I know it's a recent thing, and I've spoken to you about it before on radio about going over there. What's it like, and what's the future look like for cricket in America?
Yeah, so the Seattle Thunderbolts it's an exciting venture. I took my family across to the US, and it was an interesting conversation with my wife when I walked in and said, pack your things. We're moving to the US to play cricket and to coach cricket and to, I guess, start a franchise over there. So it was the opportunity to be involved in a franchise starting in an emerging market, which is the US, was something I couldn't give up. And it was one of those ones that was like, if you're ever going to do anything in cricket, this is one of the things that you need to jump at. So we did. We went over and played and managed in the minor league, the US minor league, Toyota minor league over there, which was 26 teams across the country in 4 divisions. And we were lucky enough to win the whole thing, which was incredible. So we had there's no local Americans playing. It's all expat Indian, South African, Sri Lankan. It's a World 11. My team was. It probably taught me so much about world cricket because we had a mashup of cultures, and it was the way the Indians played was completely different to the way the South Africans played, which is completely different to the way the Sri Lankans looked at cricket. And it was completely different to the way that we in Australia have been brought up on cricket. So culturally, I learnt a lot. Cricket culture, I learnt even more. And it was an amazing time. US cricket's in a really interesting space with a lot of money and a lot of interest in that minor league and major league. So major league will start next year, which will be a 6-team competition, fully professional, big money. The IPL are buying into that competition as well. So it's really, I think it's going to be the next T20 space. And if you think of it this way, and like I've said this to you before, that it's American sport mashed with Indian money, it's only going to be big. And it really is. It's in its infancy. US cricket's having some issues that they've got to get through, and the ICC have moved in there and are helping them. So once the administration can get things sorted, there's a lot of interest from a lot of people in the US to make this happen. So I think it's going to be big, and the way they're talking, and there's people I'm speaking to, they want it to be the second biggest competition in the world. Yeah. And I wouldn't put that past the Americans and the Indians.
Just finally, and it's the most important question, what does Victorian cricket mean to you? Now looking back on it, what does it mean to you? Victorian cricket means a lot to me. It's probably the only team that I've that and the Carlton Football Club are the only 2 teams that I've really loved and watched for my entire life. And I loved playing and being handed my cap, and Warnie handed my cap 804, and it's just something that means a lot to me. And even when I moving away from Victorian cricket, I was that really hurt me as a person and as a cricketer. Again, I said I had to do it professionally, but I love this place. I love watching the boys play. I'm probably their biggest fan, and watching them play and watching them how well we've done over the last 20 years is something that I'm really proud of. Back from the Hooksy era to now with Bucky, it's it means a lot to me, and I love watching them play and can't wait to see them roll out again on Monday. I've been really excited about having a chat to you. You haven't let me down. It's been awesome. Jono, thanks for being part of it as well. And I'm sure we'll touch base again before the end of the season.
Absolutely.
That ends the Vic State Cricket Podcast for this week. We hope you've enjoyed the chat. We'll do it again next time.